Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Hub. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The Hub is our community space where we discuss a plethora of things to include health, finances, community, education, and politics. And so I have some very special guests with me tonight as we discuss single parenting in a pandemic. So thank you guys for coming to hang with me tonight as we discuss what it's like for us to be single parents in this pandemic. I'm so honored to have you here. And so I'm going to do a quick introduction of our guests. With me, I have Raheem Terrain, and I'm going to read about Raheem. Apostle Terrain is the father of two beautiful children, ages 13 and 9. His love for his children is the fuel that drives his calling to actively parent and participate in the lives of his children. He is the published author of two literary works entitled A, The Woman Every Man Wants, and B, Surviving the Unsurvivable. Awesome! Yay! I'm gonna have to get these books. So thank you, Raheem, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much. I'm honored to have you here.
I am so excited to be here with you, and I want to have fun tonight. I know we're gonna have fun, and we're
We
gonna
will.
talk about some stuff that I know I was going crazy the first couple of weeks of homeschooling. So I'm excited about this to share.
Awesome. Yay. Also, we have Bethany Miller. Bethany is, she's graduate with a bachelor's in child and family services. She's completing her MSW in May with the clinical track focus on trauma. She's currently a behavioral coach. She's completing an internship in a therapy office. Prior to CPS, she did in-home case management, therapeutic day treatment. She was married at 19 and was married for 17 years, and she has a daughter with health issues. So, Bethany, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And of course, I'm your host, Shamara Webb. A little bit about me. I'm a life coach, currently working on a doctorate in organizational leadership, and I'm a mother of two beautiful little girls, Stella and Savannah. So let's dive right into this conversation about single parenting in a pandemic. Let's so. All right. So my first question for everybody is, and I'm going to start in the order that we came in, I guess, unless whoever wants to answer first. How has the pandemic affected you as a single parent? How has the pandemic affected you as a single parent?
Well, I'll let ladies go first because it's always a
Okay.
privilege to hear from the ladies first.
Okay. Well, you came in first, so I was going with you. But I can go first. So I think it's been a little bit challenging. It's been rewarding. I can't say I completely hate it because I've gotten to spend a lot more time with my daughter. But it has been hard. As a single parent, when I was working full time, I was on call and there was so much going on. It because, you know, up until December, I was a CPS worker. So I was helping so many other families, and it was really affecting kind of my family because, even though my family is very tiny, it's just the two of us for the most part, it affected her. And I was out in these homes, and you know we didn't get to work from home, we didn't get to do the safety, so we're in the midst of all of this crazy. There was never a time like hospitals, we didn't get to not protect children because there was a pandemic out there. So I will say that part of it was stressful. It added all of that on top of, being a parent. And then, of course, as we talked about, my daughter having health issues, that was a major concern. Um, and, just the social aspect that people are missing and I was missing and my daughter was missing. So it was hard, but I'm thankful for the time that I got because maybe while she was out, would have been out with friends. She actually had to hang out at the house with her mom. So, I look at it, I'm very thankful because she is 16 and in just a few short years, she'll be out of the house and I'm not going to be cool to hang out with. So I was very thankful that we were able to be healthy and we had a roof over our head and I was able to make it even when it was super hard. So as much as it sucked, I can find so many blessings in disguise, and I'm just very thankful for it.
Awesome. Sounds good. So, Raheem, can you share a little insight on your situation as it relates to this pandemic and how it's affected you?
Yeah, so my story is a little bit different. I have joint custody of my children, so they're with me, mainly on the weekends. But what makes my story a little bit unique is that prior to the pandemic happening, I was supposed to have like a major surgery because I was having prostate cancer issues. So when the pandemic hit, prior to the pandemic hitting, I would have my kids a lot. So once the pandemic hit and, COVID started spiking in the state of Virginia, I had to start making adjustments as to how I saw my kids and the amount of time in which I saw my kids. So by the time we got to, I would say, I believe the end of the school year, June, um, I was going through an experimental type of treatment at that particular time. So for a big chunk of time from, I believe, June all the way until probably mid-August, I really wasn't able to see my kids because I was having 2 times a week 6 to 8 hour treatments, and they were absolutely brutal. Plus, they had to make sure to which I remained healthy, right? Even though COVID is going on and I was going back home after these treatments, I couldn't have too many interactions with too many people. Well, the Lord knew how my heart was and what I wanted to do. I love my kids. Every time you see me, you will see my kids with me. Well, anyway, when school started for where we live at in Stafford County, my kids started their homeschooling journey with me. And when they started their homeschooling journey with me, it was extremely stressful. I have a master's in counseling, and I felt like I had to go to school all over again just to learn what it was that they were doing. I'm not familiar with this new math. I know 1 + 1 = 2, and I don't know about all this other stuff to get you to these answers that don't make no sense to me. So in my area where I live at, I'm rather connected, and I reached out to the superintendent, and I said to the superintendent, one of the challenges is that as a parent, we need to be educated on how to use this Google Classroom. Oh, it's so many different Dreambox and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I have a full-time job. I work from home. I am a bank executive, right? So, and, I'm going through all of the health stuff, and I got my 4th grade son, and I got my 8th grade daughter who is just cruising, but my son is a natural little boy. He can't sit still. He wants to do everything. And I had to manage all of that. So what I ended up doing was I used the influence that I had, and I got with the superintendent, and I was sharing with him if I'm having this problem, trying to figure out how to navigate, this virtual classroom space. There has to be other parents like me. So what I did was I gave them a suggestion. How about you just create a class for parents? Well, they listened to me, and now I can do my son's work with my eyes closed when he's at his mother's house and his mother's saying, Raheem, Bryson's not doing his work. I get on the phone and say, open up that box because I'm sitting here looking at it right now. So it took me some time to actually get accustomed, to it. And even though, I'm fine, health wise, I still have to be very careful. So my daughter's very social. She want to go and hang out with her friends, and she know when she come to dad's house, dad gonna let me do whatever I want. And so I had to start telling her, no, I'm not gonna let you go hang out with this person because you could come back and we could have a whole sort of issues. But it has affected, me. It affected, how I was able to view, the things that which, I was able to do before. So now I'm more of the school authoritarian when mom normally was the school authoritarian. And now I've got to, grab my son up and say, no, you're going to sit right next to where my office is at in the same room, and we're going to work this stuff together. So now all I got to do is look back, and he knows that he needs to be typing and doing things like that. But I I learned a lot through the whole pandemic with the school, and it caused my relationship with my children to be even greater. Because my daughter called me today and she said, "Hey, Dad, I got to do this project for Spanish," and normally she wouldn't call me and ask me, but since we've worked together, now she's calling me for her projects, and it's opened up a brand new door. For us. So the pandemic, helped me. I didn't like it in the beginning, but it helped me. I need a check though, because I'm a teacher too now.
Well, let me add
With
some
you.
perspective, right? So, thank you guys for both sharing your situations. Let me give a little insight on mine. So, by day, I'm an HR professional. So, I'm in HR management. I work my hours now. I had to switch my hours simply because my daughters are, I have a first grader and a third grader. So I'm just adding a little bit perspective of this age range. I'm adding what my first grader is learning how to read and the math and the conjugation and she's spelling. So this is totally different because you guys have older kids. So I have these small children in this virtual environment. So when it initially happened, I was like, okay, this is looking like an answered prayer. Yay. All right, let's go, God. So I was really excited about it. And then school in the middle of the year, so Savannah, which is my 5-year-old, she was 5 when the pandemic, she's 6 now, but she was 5 when the pandemic started. So we had the space that had a kindergartner in a pandemic. So I'm just adding that per perspective because her so young, her brain is so young, her mind is so young, and Stella at the time was second grade. So we were up into this school year, and so I had them working in the same space as me, but they have to get up and sing PE songs and they have to dance and they have to move and they have to jump and they have to run around the house and I still have to work, and so I'm getting calls and I'm on the phone and my kids are coming to my Zoom meetings and they're saying hi to the senior leadership at my job. So for me, it has looked totally different than it looks for y'all. But all the same, I do think it's a blessing, but it is a balance because, and I want you guys to kind of share some insight on this. I almost don't know when my day ends because I wake up at home, I log into my laptop, I go to work, my girls get up, get them prepared for school, they log into their laptops. So we all just sitting there on laptops working. And so they're out of school, then I'm still at work. And then when I get off work, there's no transition from the office home. I just walk and I'm like, oh, hey, here I am again. So are you guys kind of experiencing that as well?
I will say now that I am home because I took a job where I will be home. It gives me more hours with my daughter. And I can totally see that because through this, having helping with other kids and, because parents aren't home. So I get that. I can totally relate to what you're saying, like kids everywhere. And, but it is, we were talking about it in one of our meetings for, one of the things that I'm doing in school is focus on trauma. And we talk a lot about different things, and it appears a lot of times for a lot of people, there is no clear boundary. We're working more hours and we're working harder because kind of like we're compensating for not being in the office. But again, like we have to have these clear set boundaries because if we don't, we're going to burn out. Like, now we're playing more roles. Like, granted, yes, we should have all been involved in our children's, education and homework and checking in. But now there's a huge responsibility. Like, are you on task? Because yeah, the teacher's doing their thing, but they're not there. So when they're trying to redirect the child, they're like, what are you gonna do? You're on the screen, so I can see that. And it does, even like that drive home from work, even if it's 10-15 minutes in the car, no music, which I did get from you, friend. I've learned over time. I'm like, I'm not listening to music. And then I think of you because you used to always tell me, and I'm like, how can you not listen to music on the way? And I drive and I will be driving for long periods and my radio never comes on because that's my peace time. Um, but I can see how that blurred line, it's hard because now we're not taking the time for self-care, and a lot of people don't think that ride home or it's decompressing, like you're processing everything you went to, so now you can transition into being mom, dad, whatever role you're in. But when you're home all day, that's just, it's hard on your mental health.
So for me, um, in the beginning, it was really, really difficult because I had to change the way I functioned within my home. Right. So because my kids came to me for the first 45 days of them starting, virtual school, I'm accustomed to normally having them on the weekends and the summer and then all of the major holidays. So it was a drastic change. And, being an individual that worked from home, and I'm in the banking industry, you are right. I did find myself working more, and I found myself I found myself being mentally worn down. And when I found myself becoming mentally worn down, I realized that my temperament was changing. And not only was my temperament changing, but my ability to be extremely patient was really wearing thin. So I manage individuals that are in the Philippines. So the Philippines are hours behind us. So there was a point in time to which my hours at my job fluctuated. And when it fluctuated, it forced me to work hours that I normally would be doing things with my kids. So while my kids was with me, I learned quickly after the first week of doing the homeschooling, the first trial week, that I implemented that once they were done with their school day, that I took 30 minutes and I would go in my room and I would tell Alexa to turn on, and I would have storms playing in the background. And I would just, take some time and I would just take a nap for 30 minutes. My daughter knew when that alarm went off in the Alexa in her room, she knew to come wake dad up, and then I was going to function for the remainder part of the evening. But until I got to that specific space, I found myself extremely overwhelmed. I'm not as young as I look. Let me just say that, right? So because I'm not as young as I look, right? I'm already set in my ways when it comes to electronic learning, right? So having to do all of these new things, and my daughter's in 8th grade, so she's just in her room doing her schooling, and my son is sitting right here with me in my office. I'm doing his schooling, and if things didn't work out for him, I had to be IT, I had to be the instructor, but I was blessed. I was blessed because I had a niece that lives in the area, and she's in college, but she was doing her college virtually. So what I did was I said, listen, I'm going to pay you to come here, and I want you to be Bryson's teacher. And if you do this, this is how much money I'm going to pay you. And guess what? You get free meals, you get free room and board, and you don't got to worry about your mother telling you nothing. You can take my car when you need to go somewhere. And you want to know something? That was my lifeline. That was my lifeline because it allowed me to focus on, the main part of my job. And I'm an executive director for one of the largest financial firms in America. So my job is very, very stressful, is high demanding. I report to 3 VPs, and they want what they want when they want it. And I want what I want when I want it. And when I don't get it, I'm looking at whomever, and so that was a little bit of a challenge for me, but that's how I was able to make it through. Was I knew that was going to be a deficit. I didn't have the overall bandwidth, still having to go through treatments, still having to make sure that my daughter, who's 13 and going through her own hormonal stuff, having to deal with a 9-year-old 4th grader who just only want to play video games, and dad don't play that, right? And then having the demand of having 3 time zones that I'm in charge of. It was extremely difficult. So I'm just grateful, for what the Lord has done to bless me on that end.
And so I will preface, as before I transition, that we're excited that we can work from home and our kids are safe. I get it. But this new norm presents with an anomaly because it's almost abnormal. And I see for myself there's this duality. So Stella and Savannah are asking me questions about stuff, and I'm like, I don't remember it. That's not the way they taught me. And so I'm looking like I lackluster from an educational perspective, and they're like, well, mom, you should know this. And I'm like, well, no, mom, don't know that. And so here I am reaching out to the teacher. And so it has definitely created this space where you're operating in two spaces at all times, because you're operating in your professional capacity and you're operating as a parent. When I'm in the office, I'm really just Shamara. But when the school calls me, of course, I'm my daughter's mother's, but I'm really just still Shamara. When I'm at home, I'm mommy. And what I find, and I don't know if you guys have this, is they will ask me a question before they ask the teacher. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not the teacher. Ask your teacher. I think that's a very critical dynamic, because it's almost like the parents trump the teachers now because the students are at home. And I would be like, well, did you ask your teacher? They're like, no, you're right here. And I'm like, no, 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 ask your teacher. So I think, we all are in different spaces in this, but we all have a relative experience. And so my next question is, do you feel that you have all the resources you need? Raheem, I know you said you use your level of influence to kind of initiate some change within your region, the area where you stay, but do you feel that the students have all of the necessary resources to kind of get through this?
Well, yes and no. So within, so I live in Fredericksburg City, and my kids live in Stafford. So that's the next county up. So in Fredericksburg City, what our city did was they provided free internet to everyone in our city, which I live in. Where my kids go to school in Stafford County, when I went to the superintendent, I just used my relationship from prior experience with him and said, hey, this is a challenge to which we're having. What I'm aware of is that there's still challenges in some areas, because I don't believe Stafford County, for example, provides some students the free internet just like they do here where I live at, which is a little bit smaller city capacity. But as it relates to my children, do they have everything to which they need? I would say yes, because me and their mom made sure that whatever went above and beyond what the school district was not able to provide, we were able to, provide them. I know that we use Chromebooks in Stafford County, and they're absolutely horrible. I'm just going to say, and it made it very difficult because, they crash a lot, they overheat. So what we did was we just went and bought laptops that weren't Google Chromebooks, and we just allowed the school to put their software on the computer so that they wouldn't have the lag time or being locked out of Dreambox and all this other things that they got them to do. So that's what we did. Now every parent or every child may not have that level of resource within their home.
Right.
So I would say, for some people, it's really, really difficult during this time. For me, it's a little bit easier now because I got a good grasp of how it works, how my son's schedule works, when he should be in class. There's times when, as you state, the teacher is there and he's asking the question and the teacher's vague. And I'm saying, and I'm turning around looking at him like, ask her the question, and he's like, but dad, I don't want to seem like I don't know the answer. And my response is, well, you don't. You don't know the answer. Well, dad, you're sitting right there at your computer. You know the answer. I do, but that's not my job. I'm not getting a Stafford County check. Your teacher is. Taxes are being paid for that. Ask the lady the question. So there was a time like when my son was, didn't want to ask questions. So I would go over to his computer, unmute the computer, and I would pop my head in. Hello, teacher. We have this issue. Can you help us? But I would tell you, for those who may find themselves in my position to where you're co-parenting, to where your kids go back and forth, it is extremely important that you and the other parent have some level of a relationship. Because let me tell you something, your kids will manipulate you. They will tell you, I did all my work. And then when they get to mom's house, because I look at Parent View every day. I'm on my kids' grades. Listen, AB honor roll is the only thing that's acceptable, right? And so there was times when, my kids would go back and forth, and, this just happened 2 weeks ago. Stephanie went back home and she was asking her mom for, some money to do something. And the mother said, okay, fine. You got straight A's. Well, the mother called me and said, hey, Rod, Stephanie wants money to do this. What do you think about it? I said, give me a second. I went on Parent View. Those A's that was there on Monday, there was 3 A's and an F. And I told the mother, absolutely not. So then when I get on the phone with Stephanie, she's crying because she knows when I'm on the phone, Stephanie, what's going on? Oh, I said, well, what's the problem? I'm overwhelmed. Okay, I understand. You got to talk to me and your mom. Tell us what you're overwhelmed so we can provide you the support, right? So anyway, long story short, she was coming to my house on that weekend. You know what she did? She didn't have no iPhone. She didn't have no Apple Watch. I took it all from her. The only thing she could do is sit at the dining room table and complete her work. And then when she was done, she still didn't get it back. Why? Because she had to be taught that there are real consequences. In school, the teacher would have consequenced her. Well, my house is the school. So since my house is the school, I will provide you the discipline. It's going to be different than an F. It's going to hurt you. So when you're at the house and you texting your little friends, you ain't texting nobody now. And and guess what? Her and her brother played and interacted all weekend, which is never happens. She's in the phone doing TikToks in her room and all that other stuff. TikTok shut down. Now I implemented when she comes here, she only gets that cell phone and that Apple Watch one day out of the weekend, because she needs to have a relationship with her brother outside of telling him, you need to do your schoolwork. Well, you ain't doing yours. Sit down and let's get this work done and get these A's back. Now she got straight A's. Why? Because I'm on top of it. But I have to work with the mother, and that is paramount if your kids are going back and forth, even on a weekend. Bring your projects. Mom don't got to do them more. I love doing projects. That's one thing I love to do. Bring it. I got the money. I want to spend it on a project that's outside of taking y'all to Sky Zone to jump around for an hour. Let's do some work to get educated.
I wanted to jump in there. You said something, and Bethany, I know this might be different for you because let's talk about the social aspect. So I have two children who are in school at home. Raheem, you have two as well, and Bethany, you just have Haley. So when we look at the social dynamic, Stella and Savannah have each other. Raheem's kids have each other, and that's another important aspect to me that we really don't think about from the virtual perspective, but it's still true and it's still there. The interaction that kids are missing because they aren't seeing their peers. So how do you deal with that, Bethany?
It's hard. I have been blessed with an extremely intelligent child, so she's usually teaching me as we go. So it's with her, because she's an only child, like kind of that interaction, she's kind of like, cool, whatever, pretty chill and laid back. But the one thing that I do truly hate about the pandemic is that we call it social distancing. We really need to call it physical distancing, because what I've seen a lot through my work and through therapy and things like that is subconsciously we hear social. So we think, oh, we can't talk to people. We start shutting people out, and people started, and I am all for, protecting each other and being safe. But you can still be safe by picking up your phone. You can video chat. There are things that you can do that are still very social that do not have any kind of physical, and that's 100% safe. So in the beginning, I think it was kind of hard because, hear me who wants to, promote, social emotional health and growth and all these kind of things. And everybody, just kind of shut down. And when they shut down and locked away, they were shutting down, locking away, and the communication between everybody stopped because there was such a fear. But it was like subconsciously we're hearing social distance, social distance, social distance instead of physical distance, because we still need to have communication with each other. And I hate, that, it's always phones, but, did I see people who talked like between like their glass doors and windows and things like that, just because humans are very social creatures. And I think that is why we're seeing kind of that uprising in mental health. And, we had to make sure she was back in therapy, because she had to express these things. And we had to keep her safe. She has, an autoimmune disease, but I still understand that her mental health is just as important as her physical health. So I encouraged her, a lot of the times, like, of course, I just have the one, so it's not like, she's ignoring other siblings or anything. I'm like, reach out to your friends, check in on them, let them know that you're okay, or you hope that, and she has this small little group of friends, and they have, sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm up here. but I'm thankful that she has a good support system, even if it's not physical and they're not seeing each other and they're not going over to each other's houses. Now, there are a few friends that I know their parents are very strict as well. So we do allow, some, as like everything's been, the vaccines and things like that have been coming out, that we allow people to come over that we know that are mindful of the restrictions and things like that. But other than that, my biggest thing is to make sure that she is communicating with people, whether it's, hey, have you talked to your dad today? Have you called him? What's he doing? Or, or how's your friends doing? How's so and so? You know, Sometimes me checking in with her, she's like, oh yeah, let me ask. And then they start, talking, texting, video chatting, whatever, they do. But it is a struggle because again, there's those boundaries where I'm mom, not friend, but at least I can still be somewhat of a social outlet to her.
That's really good, Bethany. And I like what you said about this physical distancing. That's definitely perspective because when we hear social distancing, it's almost just you shutting everybody out and you're making sure yourself and your family safe. That's it. You're not really considerate. You're not really open. So I definitely like the fact that you even went a step further and said, well, Shamara, it's not just social distancing, it's really physical distancing, not necessarily that social piece. But even as we talk about it as adults, I often try to figure out what do my kids think about going to school on a laptop. As adults, we get it, we understand it, we have perspective, but I have a 6 and an 8 year old who don't have recess no more. And so for me, in my mind's eye, I just look at them when they're in school and I'm like, who would have thought that we would be in a space where elementary kids are sitting in front of laptops like college students, the working adult program, the schools, the St. Leo's, the ECPIs, etc., where you can go to school from home, even your more traditional educational institutions. And so in my mind's eye, I look at my girls and I'm like, I have a 5 year old logging in. She's 6 now, but when it started, she's logging in, and so I consider that space of being in person and just that experience that when Savannah's of age, she won't be able to reflect on going getting scratched up at recess and running so fast she scraped her knee or stuff like that. Just the innocent things we have, and so it's definitely perspective not only for us as adults but for our children as well.
Mm.
So with that being said, how are your kids adjusting to the pandemic?
Well, for me, my daughter last year was struggling with being bullied in school, and it was really bad. It was really really bad, and we were going to opt for homeschooling anyway. For her 8th grade year, it just so happened to be that. Once the pandemic hit in March, she was just getting ready to finish her 7th grade year. So we had her switch from one middle school over to the next one. And I think she was in the new middle school for probably 2.5 weeks before the pandemic hit. Right. So my daughter is at the point where, she just doesn't want to go back to school because she likes the independence of being by herself, having not really having to deal with all of the girl drama, but just dealing with the virtual world. Whereas my son, he's absolutely struggling. He's struggling from the standpoint of missing his friends, just like Miss Bethany, had mentioned in regards to the whole social distancing. I've never really paid it attention until you stated that, because it's absolutely true. When we hear the word social distance, it means to me that everything that I was doing socially, I need to move back from, instead of being physically distant from individuals who may, not be physically distancing from other individuals. So when it comes to my son and him struggling, he wants to go back to school. And he wants to go back to school because he was sharing with me, he was like, Dad, I miss the interaction with my teachers. I had, and he says, I have more enjoyment, being in the presence of my teachers than having to look at them through a screen. And, I want to be able to play with my friends and things like that. So I even realized that even with what he was stating, in so many words, he was saying my mental health, he's 9, so he don't know the word mental health, right? But he's saying, my mental health in regards to me getting a break from having to be in the house with mom, be in the house with you, you guys having to homeschool us and all of these things, there's no break in between. It's like we're on top of each other 24 hours a day. This is starting to affect me because I don't have the ability to go play with any of my friends. So what I've done on that aspect is just like Miss Bethany stated, those that I know that are very cautious and very careful, we will allow our children to get together because we all know what each other is doing, and this provides them that ability to have that interaction with other kids. And every now and then, if it's just Bryson with me on a weekend, I'll bring him, for example, to, let's say, a Sky Zone. He may not interact with a bunch of kids, but the mere fact that kids are in his mix is psychological. It automatically will make him feel, as if he's getting, the fix. It would be the easiest word to say, that he needs, or that, connection, which he needs to, calm him down and to have him, be able to function, for whatever length of time it is before I bring him back to that space. So my son wants to go back to school. I would like to send him back to school, but I don't trust the overall system to which we have here in Stafford, for example. I don't want to put my son at risk for someone within his classroom, or he's interacting within the school setting that may be asymptomatic, and he brings it home unknowingly, and then he gives it to his mom, or he gives it to his grandmother who lives at his mother's house, who is much older, or he even comes to my house. The good thing for me is that I've gotten the vaccine based upon, my doctor making the recommendation. So I'm no longer worried, as it relates to that. But I still have to think about, the hypothetical, because the hypothetical is there, right? So because the hypothetical is there, I have to think not only for him, but sometimes I even have to think for mom. And some, because I'm a thinker. So because I'm a thinker, I see, things further down the line than maybe mom does at times. And so, if it gets to the point to where it's safe, then, we will. We've even considered, hiring a teacher, that will work after hours. And instead of, Bryson, for example, going to school during the regular school day, that we would have his hours, he'll be free during the morning, and then possibly from 5 to 8 every day, he would have the instructor come in, because we've already, our county agreed that if we wanted to do that, that they would be willing to count that as that being his school. So, I would just encourage the parents out there, you have more leverage than you think. You trust me, you have more leverage than you think, because at the end of the day, when you are talking to these individuals in the school system, it is not what they want. It is what is best for you, and what's best for your children, and what's best for the safety of your home and the dynamic of your home. And if you go into these meetings with that level of confidence and with that level of understanding, you would alleviate all of the stress in your house. But you have to be willing to, I'm just going to say, get off your do nothing and do something. We got, and we're just going to be transparent here, right? Because we got some parents that aren't engaged in their kids' academics when they were in school. Imagine what's happening with their kids in the virtual. Kids are being physically abused when they were in school. Imagine the physical abuse that they're getting. Forget the parents hitting them. Imagine the mental verbal abuse that they're getting, right? So imagine a kid saying, "Mom, I don't get this," and the mother's berating them. Or the mother's like, "Hey, well, figure it out on your own." That's mental abuse in all in itself, right? So So yeah, so I would encourage, those of you that are parents out here, listen, you got to do something, because if I did not say anything, right, if I did not bring this idea up, we would not be in this position to where if we really wanted to pay somebody, we could do it. I mean, the school board said, hey, we'll be willing to allow you to do it, but are you going to pay for it? My response was, if it's going to help my son, absolutely. So that's just my take.
What about you,
So,
Bethany? How do you feel about this learning experience?
so again, I'm very fortunate that my child is beyond intelligent. So it hasn't been a hard struggle for her. Originally, in the beginning, she was like, I want to go back. I want to go back. But like you shared with your daughter, it wasn't necessarily the bullying thing, but hers was nobody in class pays attention. There's always distraction. There's rude, there's disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. So originally she's like, if they have everything and they, follow the guidelines, can I please go back? So her father and I were like, okay, if this is, we talked with her specialist. I mean, it was not a light decision that we made. And when it was time to go back, she's like, Mom, I feel like I'll be in prison. Like the rules and the guidelines, she's like, I have more social connection at home than I would in the school. She's like, it is so, she's like, we're going to be in pods. We have to wear face shields if we eat. Like, I mean, just like all this, she's like, you can't touch anybody. You can't talk to anybody. She's like, if I'm home, at least if I have to go to the bathroom, I can go to the bathroom, so her and her father and I, we talked and we decided that, if she's expressing this, at 16, let's respect this. But I can also respect how it must be for a younger child. I can really appreciate how you said, just that connection. And the thing is on the social aspect that we're really focused on the health aspect, which is great, but mental health and physical health are very much intertwined. Our emotions, our actions, behaviors, they're all connected. And so with that being said, kids, adults, we all crave social interaction. We call it skin hunger. When you see, children misbehaving and, in facilities that do like takedowns and stuff, we see that these kids are reacting, or these adults are reacting because nobody touches them. So they act out because they know they'll be put in a bear hold. So not only do we have, we crave physical affection and touch, we crave, social, like this is a social thing. We are completely in different areas, and I'm in a home all by myself right now. So this is safe, but we're still social. So it is hard. It's one of those things like you have to really decide what's best for you and your family. And sadly enough, with my history in CPS during the pandemic, we saw a lot. I mean, even with the schools that are giving the free internet, you're giving them to people who like families, because there isn't a whole lot of traditional families out there anymore. You have grandparents raising children, and they don't know how to, if you give them these things, they don't know how to work it. And it's difficult. And now you have, parents who didn't graduate middle school, and they're trying to teach their high schoolers, or they're trying to teach, even like, if here we're sitting here saying, I have two highly educated people in front of me, and I hear you guys saying I couldn't do the math, I had to reach out and do these things. My heart goes out for the parents that they struggle to have their own voice because maybe they struggled in schools, or they have all these different things going on. And you are 100% right when you talked about the abuse. It isn't just about the physical. A lot of abuse and neglect cases are a lot of the verbal. We see it. And the sad thing is our number one reporters were teachers. And now you have pulled these kids, and it just, I don't know, gets my heart, knowing that there's these kids out here that are struggling. There are kids, we talk about, are they not learning? But, as you stated, you have a, now 6-year-old logging in and working on a platform that college students are working on. Like my daughter, she's working through Canvas, the same program that I used throughout undergrad and my master's program. So she's using it. So thankfully, I was able to kind of talk her through it, and it was pretty simple. Um, but we have these small children who are adapting and they're very resilient. And I think that's what we're seeing. Now, are some kids struggling? Yes. I don't want to say that they're not, but we also need to look at the fact that they are resilient and they're able to do these things. And they're like, hang on, I'll show you real quick. And, they might not understand the concepts all the time, but the fact that they've mastered this technology, I mean, that says a lot in itself too. I mean, I think we're all trying to do the best that we can in this not so positive situation because we're all scared. We all want to protect our loved ones. Um, so I really think it's a perspective thing. We're all stuck in the same boat. Some of us are on yachts and some of us are on dinghies, but we're all on the same water, trying to figure out, trying to navigate, trying to do what's best for our children. And it is hard. So whether it's you have one child who's old, one child who's young, or 10 children, we're all trying to figure out how to navigate through this with the little things that we have and use our resources and try to figure it out. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I think it really depends on each individual family and what they feel is best for their family. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
I did my
Bethany, I definitely can say your insight. I'm definitely appreciating the insights you bring from the CPS realm because it definitely opens doors to stuff that a lot of parents just don't think about. Because in a space like this, you're so inundated with your situation and your stuff, you don't think outside of your stuff. You're really concerned on your kids, what's going on in your house, that you don't consider your neighbor, you don't consider the other student, because we're in this environment where it's all inclusive. I mean, it's all in your house, not a lot going on outside of the house. And so I think that's, you bring this dynamic of, I know what's going on with Hey, but let me consider this other child, what they're dealing with. And so I think that's very, 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 very valuable. My take on it is I agree with both of you alike that I'm very blessed. My girls are adjusting, and I don't stress Stella and Savannah out. My expectation remains straight A's. You in school. You have no reason to bring me nothing else. But at the same token, it's not this stressful environment because I have small children adjusting to grown up tendencies, and I take that in when I sit down and they're overwhelmed. And I remember Savannah's very first day of Zoom, and she asked her teacher, was the meeting over? And I was just like, oh my God. So Savannah has seen me in that many meetings that she's saying, ma'am, is the meeting over? Can I log off? And it was funny to me because I'm like, oh my God. So, they, of course, our kids imitate what they see. And so they see me in Zoom meetings all the time, but I do not stress my children out. My expectations from educational standard is the same. Now, I can't lower that because I'm at home with you. So my expectation is going to be higher, if nothing else. But when it comes to the stressing and just, oh my, I don't have that in me because my children are adjusting to something I never thought would happen. And I think as parents, that's something we got to be cognizant of. Our kids are adjusting equally. Yeah, we still have our responsibilities as professionals, but we have children who are trying to learn. Like my girls don't have the manipulative. You remember in math, we counted bears and we counted blocks. Still and Savannah are touching their screen trying to count. And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to order fake money and fake quarters. And I'm ordering all this stuff off Amazon to recreate, if you will, this educational environment so that they can get it. So, I'm very pleased with the school system that my girls are a part of. They're doing a great job. All the students were issued Chromebooks and just the teachers being very flexible. But at the same token, it is a very unique and a different experience. And I wanted to tap into what, right, this mental health. And Bethany, I know you stated how the mental abuse and the verbal abuse, that is paramount. And again, I don't think that's something we consider because when we talk about abuse with children, we're so zoned in on the physical aspect of child abuse that we don't consider mental abuse. So, no, you can't imagine a child being called dumb and stupid and you don't know what you're talking about and you never going to be nothing and you're looking at a screen all day. So you don't have no touch. You don't have nobody to rub you on your shoulder and say it's going to be okay. You were literally just looking at somebody, and I would dare say we don't know the amount of silent cries that there are behind these Zoom screens. And I think that's amazing. You know, my my girls have classes full of students, and you really never know what it looks like behind the screen, if you will. You don't know. So I definitely think, that we're all blessed. We all are in a good situation. I'm grateful for that. And of course, we can just pray for all the other single parents and all the other parents who are dealing with this. But I do have a question as we get prepared to wrap up. Are you prepared to send your children back to school? And I think, Bethany, you said, Haley said no. Raheem, I think you alluded to, you all were considering a teacher to come
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So for my daughter, no, we're not gonna send her back to school, not yet. Maybe, after the 8th grade year, when she gets to high school, we will consider it. But for my daughter, no, because she doesn't want to go back. For my son, we have considered it, but it's too risky at this present moment. I think when it gets a little bit more controlled in our area, then we would reconsider it. But we definitely are working on hiring a teacher after hours that would be willing to come to the house. They gave us referrals of some as well, who would come in after hours to provide some instruction and time to help with that load.
Awesome. And so,
I,
Bethany, you
I
said
just
you
want to,
all were expecting Haley.
right now, no, we're not. But I think, just kind of wrapping back to that mental, you know, and emotional health piece, I think, one thing that you said that was very key is, you hold your standard high, but you provide a safe environment where there's no stress. Like, there's the expectation, there's a consequence for the action, but they know that they're not going to be yelled at, they're not going to be screamed at, because children, just like adults, they don't like to be yelled at, and they shut down, they stop listening, they don't function. I mean, I could do a whole nother podcast, on what yelling and screaming actually does to the brain, especially in small children. But not all children have that. So knowing that some parents, are really wanting their kids to go back, some parents are really wanting their kids to stay home. And I think it's really important, not only for myself as a Christian, but, as a social worker, as a member of society, just to be real mindful that we don't know everyone's situations and what's going through. So if somebody chooses to send their kid to school versus keeping them home, we're already missing so much of that social piece because we're social distancing versus really we should be physical distancing. Is we still need to support each other, especially as single parents, as co-parenting parents, as married parents. We need to support each other in our decisions. And even if your decision is different than mine, I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to belittle you, and I'm not going to attack you on Facebook, because I don't know the whole story and I don't know everything behind your decision. So I think that sometimes we need to take a step back from our own personal feelings and allow people to do what's best for their family, because what's best for me isn't going to be what's best for everybody, because I
Right.
have different situations. So um, I think that's my biggest takeaway, is just be mindful of how you respond when people give answers, because we don't know the whole reason behind.
Ms. Shamara, may I say one thing? One thing which I want to just share here, and I do believe that this is important. Even though our children are going through a level of trauma and a level of agony, as well as a level of distress, we must remember to which the parents are experiencing the same thing. They are, being forced now to work from home. Like, my job pretty much forced me to work from home. I agreed with being a work at home individual, because we kept having multiple people on site, testing positive, and that would have been absolutely catastrophic for myself, right? So we have, parents now having to be educators. There's no separation between being mom and dad and being a teacher. You're all wrapped into one. You have the stressors of, as we stated earlier, of technically working more, because I work longer and more from home than I would ever work in anybody's office, right? And it just so happens by nature, because we're home, we feel as if we have to work more. It's psychological. I don't even know why, right? But because we're home, we feel, because we're there, that that we may be cheating, but in all actuality, we're really not. They have invaded our personal space where there isn't no real separation. So we have some parents, who are going through mental health issues all at the same time as well. And you have these children, who are the recipients of this, new levels of lashing out. And maybe it may even be an existing type of a behavior, that's within the home. This whole COVID situation that we find ourselves in is a mental damager across the board, even for the strongest individual, because it's a sneaky, slick, sly. If you don't pay it attention, by the time you pay it attention, you're so overwhelmed with 50 different things that you normally wouldn't even have been bothered with if you had the overall normal conditions, under which we had there. So I understand the whole aspect in regards to the children, but I think, when you have children in the home who are stressing, because of school, and then you have parents now, who have financial issues now. The financial issues become even bigger because now we're feeding them for lunch. Let's really think about that, right? So we're feeding them for lunch. Our electric bill is going higher. Our water bill is going higher. And every other bill that you can possibly think of now has gone higher because we are now compensating, right? We're now compensating for things that our tax dollars already paid for. If you really think about it, our tax dollars have paid for all of this stuff. So now you have that level of stress in the home, right? So I remember, my kid's mom said to me, Ra, just think about this, Ra. My food bill went up $400 a month because the kids are here. I didn't believe it. I said, there's no way that your food bill went up $400. But when she showed me the actual receipt, and she was like, well, the kids just eat all the time. I said, well, why are they eating all the time? Hear me now. Now I'm in dad mode. Why are they eating all the time? When they're at my house, they hardly want to eat anything. I buy them everything that they want. And they, it's because at my house, it may be a little bit different, right? Because I'm very structured. We know what we're going to do up in here, right? Whereas, because mom is inundated with her own stuff, the kids more so function and manage on their own. Thus the $400 increase in the food bill. So it wasn't until me and mom had a conversation about, wait a minute, when they're here for the month and a half they was here, my food bill didn't go up by $400. It went up significantly because I'm a single, individual living by myself. But I did not see, those type of deals that are stressors. Because think about this, $400 for an individual who may be making minimum wage and they may just have just enough money to pay their rent. $400 is going to make that well put together parent absolutely insane. When they now don't have that $400 because they done paid it out in food. And let's just say they're not getting no support from the other parent. Now, they're mad at the kids because now they're able to pinpoint the source. Oh man, I'm talking good already. Now they're able to pinpoint the source of, watch this, now a new mental health condition. I'm restless. I can't sleep at night. I'm agitated in the morning. Dad, these kids eating another bowl of cereal? You mean to tell me one bowl ain't good enough for you? And your son's 6'3", he's 13 years old, he wears 13 size shoes, and watch this, at school, they can eat as much as they want now. But now, you remember last month, you had to call old boy to get the money. Y'all, man, I'm trying not to preach, but so when we look at that from that situation, honestly, I think mental health needs to be mandated for every American citizen. In this specific juncture where we're in, every American needs a mental health counselor.
I would just like to add that right now, a lot of insurance companies don't even pay for mental health.
And you want to know something?
Horrible.
And you know something, that is absolutely horrible, because you want to know something, the cost of getting mental health counseling versus the cost of burying somebody is lower to do the mental health aspect. And you know, like we're giving out all these stimulus checks, and praise God for those of you who are able to qualify for the stimulus money, right? But within those bills, there needs to be some level of a mandate. If you're going to mandate me to wear a mask, you need to mandate me to get mental health, to be mentally stable, because I may be able to function right now, but one situation can happen that can cause me to blow up, that will be compounded from everything else to which we have experienced from this, you know, pandemic. And you know, my son, you know, he's 9, he's cool, but you know, my 13-year-old daughter, as I stated, you know, she's going through her hormonal changes. So for me, she's fine, but then for her mom, she's a challenge.
Mm.
So how do we deal with that? Because on both sides, everybody need help. Because everybody have to be able to learn now how to function with each other, right? Because some parents only function enough when they get in the house to feed the kids, ask them how their day was, go to bed, and then wake up to do the same cycle of going to work and getting in their car, driving 2 hours in I-95, Northern Virginia traffic. Now there ain't no traffic. The traffic is who's getting in the bathroom at what time, who's going to get up to get online on time, and who's going to cook breakfast and all this other stuff. So I think we need to go back, and we need to look at the mental health of everybody in the home, because if we do not, we are going to have a generation of damaged kids, a generation of kids that are socially awkward, that do not know how to interact with one another. I grew up in the 70s. My mother told me, go outside and play, and we didn't come back inside until the lights were coming on. And because of that, we knew how to interact with people. These kids, let's be honest, don't know how to interact with one another. They're interacting through these. My son want to play video games all day. I give him a time limit. You can play this many hours within a week, and that is it. Other than that, you have to interact with peers your age, because when all of this is all said and done, you need to be able to hold a conversation. You need to be able to know that you need to look somebody in the eyes. Well, how do you learn that? You learn that in an environment where you're able to be social.
Right, I absolutely agree. And as we see, this is a topic that can go on and on and on. And I think maybe as the world reopens, we might want to revisit it, you know, what happens when our kids return back to school. But I thank you guys so much for your time tonight. I thank you all for your insight. I thank you just for your passion, you know, of how this affects you and just being transparent with you on this platform tonight. Do you guys have any final remarks before we wrap up?
I just
I
want to thank you for letting me come and talk and share. Um, I feel very honored and blessed at the same time. So thank you for thinking of me. And I think everybody's added some very different perspectives and insight. And, you know, it was even informative for me. So I just want to thank you guys for that.
Thank you for joining us, Raheem.
For me, I just want to say thank you to you, Miss Shamira. Thank you to you, Miss Bethany. I've learned a whole lot. I appreciate this opportunity. I just want to say God bless you, and I love Bishop Gary Rogers and my spiritual mom out there, Pastor Lisa. Love you guys. Thank you. This was awesome, and this conversation needs to continue, because there are parents out there like us that are, you know, fixing these things and working our way through it, and there's some parents that aren't like us that's pulling their hair out. Look, all this gray up here, I got this from this home learning, whatever they call this stuff. I ain't have this much. This
Virtual learning.
virtual learning gave me 90.
Mine is called a really good stylist.
Oh,
That's
okay.
because
Likewise.
mine was there a few last weekend, and I was like, you got to fix this because this is not okay.
Right. It is not okay.
Well, thank you guys again both for your time. And we're just going to keep all the educators and the students and the parents up in prayer. I mean, that's the space we're in. So that's what we can do to be mindful. Of course, thank you to our sponsors, House of God Worship Center. Thank you to our leaders, Bishop Gary Rogers and Lady Lisa. Join us here next month, first Friday, if you will, I'm sorry, of April. And we'll be tackling another topic of managing mental health in a pandemic. We have a licensed professional counselor coming to join us. You don't want to miss that conversation. And I want to invite you to our service Sunday at 11:15. You can join us right here on Facebook Live, and you'll be able to join with us. Thank you guys. Have a great night.